And I just remember in that moment just feeling this like almost like a flood, just the Spirit came over me and I just started crying. When I first got introduced to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I was actually in high school, but I didn't really like get into the church or understand much about it until my senior year. I was with a group of 3 other guys. We played tennis together. We did everything together. And one of us, he was a member of the church, and he would attend early morning seminary where they get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to study the scriptures for an hour and then go to school. And so when my buddy came to me with the idea of having me and our 2 other friends go with him to seminary, what teenagers wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or before that, get ready for school, and then go learn about the scriptures in the morning? Like, that is just phenomenal. So I went and started really getting into it. Everyone was super nice, and I just loved the people. I went for a few weeks, and then I remember one day I got home, and my mom, she's like, "Oh, you're really into this whole Mormon thing. You're kind of taking a liking to it." I'm like, "Yeah, they're really great people. They're really nice, and I'm learning a ton in the scriptures. I've never learned so much before." And she's like, "Okay, well, let me tell you the truth about the Mormons." And that's when she laid down all of like the what we call anti-mormon literature, and I felt deceived. I felt like betrayed. I felt like, here I am, I put my trust in these people. I went to class with them. I like started becoming friends, like really friendly with all of them. And they tried getting me into their cult. And so I immediately did like a 180, stopped going to seminary, and devoted myself to taking down the Mormon church. Being on the debate team, I loved being right. I loved proving my point. And so I spent pretty much like every waking hour researching everything I could about the Mormon church. So I would like find missionaries, I would find friends who were members of the church. I would even like go to their church to like talk to their bishop and try to like, battle him by pulling out scriptures and different things to tell him like how wrong he was and how they were going to hell and all that kind of stuff. And every single time it irritated me beyond belief, because every single time they would come back and say, "That's very interesting," or like, "I've never seen it from that perspective." They would ask, "Have you ever read the Book of Mormon?" or "Have you ever learned with the missionaries?" And it irritated me because I'm like, just answer my questions, or like, why can't you just like throw your hands up and say, "Oh, my religion's wrong and I should join your church"? But they never did that. Instead, they were like really polite and really friendly and very understanding, which irritated me because I wanted to prove them wrong. So that lasted for a few months. And then I got to know a girl who was a member of the church. We started dating. And of course, I tried to like convert her and tell her if she would leave the Mormon church, she'd finally be able to go to heaven and those kind of things. And I was very, very mean. But it was all with good intent. It was with good passion. I was trying to do what I felt was right. After a while, she invited me to church. I went to church with her and didn't really understand it. It was a lot different than my church. There was no, worship group up in the front. No one was singing like loudly or clapping their hands or doing anything that like I was used to growing up in my church. I invited her to come to my church. I did everything I could to just pray and ask God to like convert her, to turn her into a zealot like I was, on fire for Christ and just as passionate about tearing down the Mormon faith and also building up the cause of Christ. Little by little, my prayers changed. And it was weird because I'd never prayed like that before. At that point, like, I thought I had a good relationship with him. But my relationship grew that much more when I was really trying to understand, okay, like, God, where do I fit? And where do these people around me fit? Like, what is your plan for me? Right before leaving for church, I knelt down and said a prayer, and I'm like, okay, God, if she doesn't feel the Spirit at church, I know my church isn't right, or at least it's not the fullness. So show me what else is, and I'll learn with the missionaries if you want me to. which is not like me. Being a very prideful person, that's not like me. So I went to church with her. Everything was perfect. The pastor's sermon was right on key. She like pinned me down. She calls me. She's like, okay, Dan, we need to talk about this. I want to tell you what my experience was like. And so we finally sit down and talk about it. And she's like, okay. And the very first words that come out of her mouth were, Dan, I didn't feel the Spirit. And I just remember in that moment just feeling this like almost like a flood. Just the Spirit came over me and I just started crying. And I looked at her and I just told her, I know there's something more and I need to meet with your missionaries. My mom wouldn't allow me to do it. I was still 17 at the time. She wouldn't allow me to do it. So once I graduated high school, I moved out and started meeting with missionaries after being an adult at 18. I took all my discrepancies to them and tried to lay out every single thing that all the anti-Mormon literature that I could find, I laid out to them. And they, of course, their answer was the same as everybody else's. Have you read the Book of Mormon? Have you prayed about the church? Have you prayed about the Book of Mormon? They were just so polite and would continue to go back to, have you prayed about it? Have you asked God? Because we could tell you till we're blue in the face that it's true and whatnot, but until you ask God, the source of truth, you won't know. Well, I finally did. And it took me a while. It took me a few months to really get around to it. If it was true, that meant I had to give up everything for Him. And I love God. I'd have to move beyond what I already knew. Not saying I had to throw away any of my old beliefs, but I had to like refine them in a different way and look at God and His kingdom and all these things in a different light. And I didn't know if I was ready for that, but I eventually came to it and got my answer. And it was that the Book of Mormon is true. That God really did restore His church through the prophet Joseph Smith. And when I finally came to that realization, it was amazing. All of my questions were answered. Every single one. All the anti-Mormon things that I had, like trying to figure out, everything was answered, and wasn't answered by some other people. It was literally like I would be searching in the scriptures, in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Deuteronomy, or in the Book of Mormon somewhere, like, and throughout the scriptures I'd be reading, and all of a sudden I'd have that revelation of, oh my gosh, that's true. But having looked back on it over the years, the thing that probably drew me into the church the most, the missionaries started teaching me the plan of salvation. That's when it all changed. When I learned that I am a child of God, that I existed before this life, and that I am here to learn, to grow, and to become more and more like my Father in heaven. And it's only through the atonement of Jesus Christ that I can do that. And not only that, but that I can have a family here on earth that is not only successful, but will survive throughout eternity. And that the woman I choose to be my wife, the children that I have and raise, I'm doing it so that we can be together for time and all eternity. When I learned those doctrines, when I learned those key things, everything changed. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest news that anyone could give. That we can truly live forever with our Father in heaven. That Jesus Christ did truly not only die and suffer on the cross for our sins, but was resurrected. That He gives us the power to overcome. That was incredible. It was phenomenal. And of course, I believed in Jesus Christ before the church, or before learning about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I knew who Christ was, but I didn't understand fully the impact of the sacrifice that He had made. He didn't just die for my sins. I mean, that's great. That's amazing. But why just live in sin and just hope, okay, we just kind of bob up and down and hope that we're good enough, or that we just stay within His grace? That didn't make any sense. But knowing that His atonement doesn't just free us from sin, but enables us to become better, to become more and more like Him, was incredible. And the fact that that would enable me to have an eternal family, to be the father that I really wanted, to have the family that I pictured ever since I was a little boy, it's like, this is it. I found the true church.